Hey everyone, welcome to another video. So today's video is going to be another one within the mid lane fundamentals series. This one's actually going to be all about warding. Now I've had a lot of questions in the Discord or in the YouTube comments asking, how do I know where to ward, when to ward, what type of wards should I buy, etc, etc, etc. So I thought I'd, cover it all within this video. And the way I'm actually going to structure this video is first I'm going to go over a little bit of theory and the mindset behind warding. Then I'm going to go over the actual core mid lane warding fundamentals, and then I'm going to go over a bunch of differing examples so you understand warding to a T. Now this one's going to be very theory oriented, so make sure you either have a notepad next to you with a pen, maybe a Word document up on your computer, or even just watch this video a few times. And if you have any questions at any point, get the timestamp, send me a message on Discord, or drop a comment below in the YouTube comments, and I will respond to every single one of you. Now diving straight in, guys, every ward should change a player's behavior or at least influence the decisions made in that game after dropping the ward. And if it doesn't, you generally know it's a pretty bad or useless ward. Now, wards can be optimized to an insane amount, and warding as a skill has a very, very high skill cap, and there's a lot involved with it. So that's why I actually thought it'd be really good to do a video on it. Now, although there are a bunch of solid warding fundamentals that are pretty much applicable to every single game and relevant in every single game, which I will cover, it's important to note that warding really is best done with an open mindset through a lens of adaptation. And what I mean is that warding is very deep. It's extremely deep and complicated. And in order to understand how to best use wards, you need to have a very free flow, open mindset, and you can't look at it rigidly. So how do you do that? You may ask, Curtis, how do I look at it with an open mindset? Well, first thing you actually have to understand is that wards are like getting the formulas for, all the equations within a math test. If you don't know how to use the formulas, then they don't really serve a purpose, do they? Because you don't know how to use them. Wards are exactly the same. Wards are like information, but how you use them is the really important part. Now, warding as a skill generally improves naturally, guys, the more you understand the following concepts. Concepts such as champion identity, jungle pathing, side lane awareness, game state awareness, tempo, wave manipulation. So as you naturally get better at those things, warding will naturally improve at them. So the thing is, though, this video is going to talk about all the the nitty gritty, all the little things that, you may miss on your own. So even if you are an expert, you're a high elo player, there might be some details within this that you may miss. For example, guys, a high elo player who has a very crystal clear picture of the identity of, say, Ahri, and also has great jungle tracking, will be able to optimize their ward usage in order to increase the chances of a specific game state coming about a lot easier, a lot more effectively than, say, a silver player who can really only focus in on their lane and they have no idea about what else is going on in the map. Now, this is okay because we're all on our own learning journey. And the purpose of this video, guys, is to highlight all the differing ways that you can use wards in your games and give you the information and knowledge of a pro level understanding of warding, so you can slowly introduce maybe a few of these into your games bit by bit. Now, let's start with the absolutely crucial mid lane warding fundamentals. So, number one, guys, try to avoid using both of your vision trinkets at the same time or while the other is actually still up on the map, because majority of the time, guys, you only need to ward to one side. And if you use both, there's actually going to be a time in the game where both of your trinkets are down and you have very limited vision. So by spreading out the usage of the wards as much as you can will grant you vision for an extended, a longer duration of time. Number two, guys, never sit on two vision trinkets. You always want to have at least one ward down so that you're actually utilizing your ward timer. Otherwise, it's actually extremely inefficient. So this is a very common problem I see, especially with platinum and below mid laners. So trust me, if you review your games, you'll actually be amazed how many people actually sit on two vision trinkets without using any of them. Number three, guys, taking the extra time to get proper wards and not be lazy will actually pay insane dividends on the back end for you and your team. Now, if you spend the time walking a little bit further toward the raptor pit rather than the mid bush or, just over the ledge, you're actually increasing the chances of actually spotting out the enemy jungler. Now, people always underestimate the power of spotting the enemy jungler because if you see them pathing topside towards their Krugs, for example, then your bot lane now knows that they're in an isolated 2v2. Your jungler can use that info to either counter jungle, counter gank, invade, get a tempo reset, whatever. Your top laner knows that the jungler is actually on topside and actually has to respect. All of these pieces of information, all of this one piece of information has actually influenced every single person on the map. all because you spent that little bit of extra time putting the ward a little bit further up. And this is why spending the time is very, very important and can pay dividends in your games. Number 4, be conscious with using wards. A massive mistake I see people do is just ward because they have nothing else to do, which results in extremely low value warding. An example of this is actually using a ward when the jungler is literally already showing bot, or just using a ward before they're basing so that when they come back to lane, they actually have no wards when they're actually ready to pressure or play aggressively. Every ward should have at least some form of intention. So then, in your review, you can look at it and be like, you know what, maybe that ward actually wasn't too effective, or maybe that ward was really effective, and I want to look to replicate that. If you're just auto-piloting wards, then you're never really going to be able to improve your warding. Number 5, always have a pink on the map, or at least one in your inventory. Remember, guys, that wards just aren't something you buy when you're ahead, or when you're only behind, or when you're even, whatever. They help you and the team in every single situation. If you are ahead, it helps you roam or isolate your lane. If you are behind, it helps you prevent invades or spot out roams. If you are even, it can create opportunities for your jungler to invade or set up a gank or even a counter gank. They can even be used to start objectives. Pink wards are the absolute bread and butter of every single mid laner. Number 6. Use pinks generally on the side that is winning, which is generally the side you want to be playing towards. The reason for this is that the side that is winning trades is the side that will most likely have the most dive potential, and given that they have pressure, it will make it harder for the enemy jungle to walk into river and clear the pink ward, because they can actually get collapsed on, or they're going to be scared because they have no vision and they have pressure. This is the side of the map where people have a lot of pressure and they're going to be moving into the river all the time. Now, you also need to take into account the next objective. If you're playing for a Rift Herald or a Dragon, this may also influence the side in which you want to put your pink ward on. Now, guys, let's get into all the little juicy details, get into the nitty gritty, where I'll actually go over a bunch of different examples that you guys can actually implement into your own games. Now, number 1, warding for level 1 and level 2 invades. Now, let's just say you just have a weak early game jungler, something like a Zac or a Kayn or an Amumu, and you're versing a jungler like an Olaf, Lee Sin, Shaco, Jarvan. You should be looking to ward level 1 on the dot brush opposite to where your team's jungler is starting, so if the jungler doesn't invade, the enemy jungler doesn't invade, they will be spotted out, and your jungler can either adapt their path, or you can both choose to actually collapse on the jungle to prevent him from stealing the blue buff or the red buff or whatever, and actually prevent him from killing your own jungler while he invades. Now, the amount of games that I've actually saved by doing this one little ward is unbelievable. So trust me, in your loading screen, as you're loading into the game, make sure you really have a think about this. Number 2, warding for level 2 ganks. If you're playing a champion that wants to pressure early levels, or you're in a matchup where you want to push or just straight up not get pushed in, or even if you're playing in a mobile mage and you're versing a level 2 jungler like Camille, Jarvan, Shaco, I recommend warding early on one side that you can safely lean without having to give too much pressure. This is, again, something that should be identified in the loading screen already. You should already be thinking about it, ready as you're in the game. Okay, I'm going to ward for this level 2 ganking jungle. Number 3, most junglers actually want to farm to level 3, and then they actually begin to become active on the map after they've gotten level 3. So if this is a champion that you're versing, try warding around 2 minutes 30 on one of the ledges so you can actually have a side to lean on and actually spot out any potential junglers heading into the river. Because remember, guys, they can't get level 3 and be active on the map before 2 minutes 30. So generally they come around 2 minutes 40 depending on the speed of the jungler. This is my go-to warding time and location, guys, so you can pretty much use this, I would say, 95% of your games. Number 4, if you're playing in a matchup that won't get any early pressure for the whole early game, maybe you're versing an Aurelion, Soul, or a Talon, I recommend warding level 1 deep somewhere so you can get some form of information. This is better than sitting on 2 wards where you never get to use them. I actually refer to this strategy a lot when playing champions with low wave clear like Kassadin or Vladimir, because these champions tend to get pushed in a lot in the early game, especially if they get countered. Number 5, guys. Now for the second ward of the game, guys, it really depends on how your lane is playing out, who's getting pressure, and the strength of the mid jungle 2v2. Let's just say, hypothetically, you're getting pressure, you're pushing in your lane opponent. It's generally always better to get deeper vision and actually move your line of vision deeper into the enemy jungle so you can play more aggressively. Now, again, this will give your jungler more information so you guys can actually coordinate plays together, like invades or, diving sides or play for objectives or counter ganks or whatever. Now, if you're actually losing your lane, you're getting pushed in, getting a deep ward is really actually quite unsafe, because if you go to try and get a deep ward, you're just going to get collapsed on and you're probably just going to die. So common locations is actually just ward on actually your side of the map. Ward, on your little ledge to the side, maybe even above your red buff, or even outside your blue. You can also sometimes sneak a ward in the dot brush in between waves, but again, as long as you're assessing the threat of the enemy mid jungle, I really strongly recommend warding on your side of the lane. Number 6, guys. Now, if you're behind, you can always use pink wards defensively to fend off invades or roams by the enemy laner. Now, this is important to note, because if you place a pink ward aggressively or in the river when you don't have pressure, it's going to be extremely hard to defend, and most likely it's just going to get wasted. Another warding tip, guys, let's just say you're versing a champion like Talon or Aurelion Sol, any roam heavy champion that is just constantly pushing you in and you just need to get a reset. A really effective way of using wards is actually just chuck one in the middle of the lane. Now, maybe you have to recall, they get tempo on you, whatever, but what this ward's actually going to do is that you're going to be able to spot which side they lean to, so that you can ping out way in advance where they're actually roaming to give your side lanes plenty of warning. So try this one out. It actually may save some of your side lanes dying to a roam. Number 8, guys. So the average go-to warding spot, if it's like an average laning phase, no one's really getting pressure, it's like back and forth, is either just the dot brush or the ledge. Now, either of them are fine if you're just looking to keep the wave in the middle or just minimize. Ideally, it's enough for you to give you a side to lean on, because you should always be leaning to one side of the lane during your complete entire laning phase. And if you don't have a side to lean on, then you're going to be extremely volatile and potentially die to ganks. Number 9. If you're playing a champion that can actually abuse a lack of vision to make picks, for example, Ahri, Velkoz, Xerath, Lux, as you've actually seen in my unranked to challenger Lux game, you can actually put a pink in the side brush, place a vision trinket over the wall, and wait for them to actually walk by or follow you into the river, etc. And you can either get a 100 to 0 burst kill, or even just chunk them or blow their flash, blow their cleanse or whatever. It's a really neat little way to use vision to actually get a really nice trade. Number 10. If you're playing an assassin, guys, pinks can actually be placed in the river to deny vision, which can actually help you push and roam. Or you can actually sit on the pink, and when the enemy tries to follow you into the river, you can just sit there and actually turn onto them and either get a nice kill, blow their flash, or actually just end up with a really nice trade. This is really common on champions like Ahri. When you duck into vision, you sit on the pink ward. When they try to follow you, you get a really beautiful trade. And then after that, you can get a tempo base, get some plates, or then you can actually roam again and actually fully commit to the roam and actually get a kill bot. So this is a really creative way of actually using pinks as an assassin. Number 11, guys. If you're really far ahead or maybe have an insane amount of tempo, you can actually then move your pinks really deep into the enemy jungle by the red buff to actually spot their path as the game actually progresses, which can give you and your team a massive amount of information. But remember what you're sacrificing for this pink. This means that you're not going to have a pink for your lane. You're not going to have a pink for the river. You're not going to have pink for the side lane bush. So you've got to remember what you're sacrificing for this. So therefore, you should only really be looking to do this if you're very far ahead, or you're pretty much already safe in your lane and you basically can't get ganked anyway. Number 12, guys. Let's just say you're really, really good at jungle tracking. Maybe you're more of like a diamond or a master tier player. You can actually hold your ward knowing which side of the map that they're going to be on after the enemy jungler does their first clear. And then you can actually spot them when they come back onto the map after they reset. An example of this would be, holding your second ward and putting it on the bot side of the map on the Raptors around 5 minutes. So as they come back on the map and, given that they've done a bot to top clear on blue side, you're going to spot them on their rubber banded camps. You can actually see how closely tied and how closely related jungle tracking and warding actually are. So like the better you are at jungle tracking, the more effective your ward usage is going to be as a mid laner. So this is something that's really interesting and basically has an infinite skill cap, guys. Number 13, guys, when playing a champion like Taliyah or Talon or Qiyana, basically any of these roaming champions, I tend to get tempo bases mid, where I hard shove, I recall, I come back onto the map with my tempo, and I get deep wards around Raptors and red buff, just normal vision trinkets. And then with this information, I can actually potentially look to pick the enemy jungler while they're low in the jungle. I actually do this all the time, and there's a lot of high elo players in EU and Korea who play Talon, and this is how they push the tempo of the game. They just invade the enemy jungler, pick them when they're on their red buff, and then start snowballing out of control. Number 14, guys. If you're really far ahead, you can actually swap to red trinket. Or maybe you're just playing a champion that wants to get side lane priority and wants to clear the vision in preparation for a roam, roaming for a potential skirmish or team fight. Or maybe you're just playing a champion like Fizz or Talon, and if you're already far ahead in your lane and you want to create a little bit more chaos on the map with your roams, you can swap to a red trinket and, sweep your way through to make sure that your roams are going to be a lot more effective and actually generate a lot more threat on the map. But remember, this is generally only something that is done when you're already ahead. It's not something that's done when you're even or behind, because you're not really going to be able to do much with your lean out of vision anyway, because they're not really going to be that scared of you. And you got to remember what you're trading off for this. If you do swap to red trinket, remember, if you do get push and move, you're not going to be able to get those deep vision trinkets. That is what you're sacrificing. So what I recommend for this specific one is play around with it. If it feels good and it works for you, go for it. Personally, this is not something I tend to do because I put a large emphasis on getting deep vision of the enemy jungler, which again gives information for the entirety of my team, because I'm very much a team player. Number 15, guys. If you're behind as a team, you can actually sometimes choose to use your trinket sneakily over the dragon pit or the baron pit to see if they're doing a rift turret or a dragon. Now, guys, you got to remember that these wards are extremely low value, and I actually kind of recommend against this sort of warding since it doesn't really change your behavior or your team's behavior. A lot of the time, if you're behind and having to do these sorts of wards, then you're not really going to be able to do anything about it anyway. You're basically going to have to give the objective anyway. The only situation in which I recommend this sort of warding is if maybe you're versing a champion that can sneak objectives or sneak dragons, like a Shyvana, how they just quickly want to solo a dragon, in which this sort of vision trinket would be useful, because then when you see the Shyvana soloing it, they're going to be quite low, and then you can maybe sneak over there and kill them, or even just hover there and actually prevent them from finishing the dragon. So this is basically the only situation I recommend using your wards like that, because again, if you're using a ward like that, it's not really going to change the way you're playing out your lane. Number 16, guys, swap to blue trinket post 20 minutes as a mid laner basically every time, and especially as a mage, because you want to be using it for face checking bushes, because you're going to be really vulnerable and there's a lot of damage and burst at that point in the game, and more importantly, you're going to be able to get vision in scary areas that you're not going to be able to go otherwise. The other great thing about blue trinket post 20 minutes is that that's when Baron spawns, so you're going to be able to constantly check for those sneaky Baron calls by the enemy team. Number 17, guys. Well, mid-game warding really does depend on the identity of your champion, and I would really refer to my mid-game macro video. But if you are a champion that wants to push out the sides deep, maybe you want to push out the sides deep then roam, you want to push them out deep and stay and go for towers, whatever, generally the play is group with your team first, get some deep vision in those key corridors, and that's going to give you the safety to be able to push out deep, get towers, roam, whatever. And if you have blue trinkets, then you can just use blue trinkets deep in the enemy jungle to provide that safety for you to get the wave out. Hopefully this video, guys, sheds a little light on how to use your wards a little bit more effectively in your solo queue games. If you have any questions about, anything I said in this video, because I know it was very theoretical, just feel free to drop a comment below or message me in the Discord. And remember, guys, lastly, that come into every game with a hypothesis. Test a new ward that you never have done before. Push your limits with a ward. And then in review, ask yourself, what was the trade-off of using this ward? What did I get out of it? What sort of information did I get? Did I get any information? Did it help? Did it change my behavior in my lane? Did it allow me to do pings or track the enemy jungler? Test it out. And this is how we actually, all of us, really improve. Otherwise, if you don't test your limits, you don't review your warding, then you're basically going to stick at that specific skill level for a long time. Thanks for watching, guys. Cheers.